Welcome to Seeking Alpha's CEO Interviews. Quality of leadership is a decisive factor in stock performance, so we provide in-depth interviews with the best and brightest CEOs in the public markets. We publish limited excerpts from our interviews on social media platforms and the full interviews at seekingalpha.com and in the highly rated Seeking Alpha mobile app. To find the full interviews, open seekingalpha.com or the Seeking Alpha mobile app and search for the phrase CEO Interviews, or simply type a stock ticker into the search box. Angus, welcome to CEO Interviews. Welcome to Seeking Alpha. Really thrilled to have you on talking Ouster. So thank you for taking the time and joining us.
Thanks. I'm glad to be here.
So catch viewers up on exactly what Ouster does.
Ouster is a developer of high-performance digital LiDAR sensors. So historically, technologies emerge, especially electronic technologies, start as analog technologies and then convert to digital technologies over time. And using digital silicon technology, which is what Silicon Valley is named after. And so Ouster is the inventor of the first digital LiDAR sensors. And our goal with that conversion from analog to digital is to make the technology much more affordable and lock its future roadmap with this exponential improvement curve called Moore's Law, which is kind of what has been driving everything that we use in the kind of digital economy forward and increasing its performance year after year after year for the last half century. And so we're digital, we're affordable, and we're locked with Moore's Law so that we can get this technology into millions of people's hands across a broad set of use cases. You know, our ultimate goal is to make LiDAR technology a ubiquitous technology, just like cameras, or really like cameras, and to a lesser extent radar sensors, which are quite prevalent across industrialized kind of markets.
Sorry, I just wanted you to unpack a little bit about what Moore's Law is to clarify for viewers.
Yeah, sure. So Moore's Law is this really fantastic underpinning. It's not even a law, actually. It's an observation that was made by Gordon Moore, which is he's one of the co-founders of Intel Corporation. And he made this observation that the number of transistors that you can put onto a silicon chip was doubling about every 18 to 24 months. And he made that observation, I think, back in the early 60s, and it has held true for the last 60 years. And it's just now tapering off, but we've had 60 years of this unbelievable exponential improvement in how many transistors you can put on a chip. And what that has done is enabled smartphones, the internet, satellite communications. It really is the underpinning of all of the modern digital technology that you use was made possible by this observation. And there's no other hardware technology on Earth that has improved exponentially for such an extended period of time. And Silicon Valley, that word silicon is a reference really to the silicon technology that is improving exponentially. And Silicon Valley has been so successful because they've leveraged that exponential improvement curve across many markets for the last half century, whether it's CPUs or GPUs or digital cameras or smartphone, modems or GPS receivers. It's all digital. It's all improving exponentially. And so we're applying that same Silicon Valley playbook to digital LiDAR for the first time.
And Ouster specifically plays in, across all of those sectors that you're describing, that it affects all those sectors. And that's one of the things that Ouster kind of, maybe stands out in that market, that you're not specific in one sector.
Yeah, well, that was one of the observations that we made when Mark, my co-founder, and I decided to found Ouster. Our first criteria was we wanted to be the company that converts this industry to digital. But if we were able to do that, the digital technology is so much more affordable and so much more performant. It can be smaller, lower cost, lower power, higher resolution. It can do all of that simultaneously. That would enable us to play across many different markets, as opposed to just narrowly focusing our company on automotive. And so today we play kind of from the beginning, we decided we were going to play across industrials, robotics, smart infrastructure, and automotive. and do that all with one technology. So in digital technology, you can build kind of one architecture, one technology that fits all use cases, and then build a wide variety of products to target those individual use cases. So you can kind of think of it like you can buy a digital camera that goes in your smartphone, and a digital camera that goes in the safety system of your car, and a digital camera that's flying on a helicopter on Mars. And those are all basically the exact same technology, the exact same architecture, same components, but slightly different products to target the different use cases. And that's what Ouster is doing with Lidar.
You know, it's interesting, this CEO interview series, I'm talking to CEOs across all sectors. And before I started it, if you would have asked me where's the innovation coming from, I would have said, well, the tech world, that's where the innovation's coming from. But in talking to all these different sectors, it's like living in the time that we're in, the innovation is happening in every single industry. And any successful company is pursuing that level of like the highest quality and the highest innovation, because that's just as you're describing, right? Like the camera's going to be in your phone, and the camera's now going to be in your car, and all of that stuff plays into and overlaps, and it's so I would say I feel like in general the marketplace is a lot more overlapping than it ever has been. So you're describing kind of how you saw Ouster from the get-go makes a lot of sense in that regard.
Yeah, I mean, said another way, Ouster is almost a bet on autonomy technology or automation technology being injected into, every aspect of our industrialized economy. And yes, every single one of the companies that we serve is innovating in their own right to adopt this new kind of set of technologies like advanced sensors like digital LiDAR and new computation and telecommunications and machine learning to turn maybe a product that was a legacy product, maybe it's a forklift, into an intelligent kind of automated machine that can operate more efficiently and more safely. And that's repeating itself across broad swaths of the economy, literally thousands of companies all marching forward and adopting this new technology. And we're just one of the companies that's supplying a critical set of capabilities to this entire kind of collective effort to modernize our economy. So absolutely, innovation is coming everywhere in the world. And we have this unique view into that activity, given that we're supplying to kind of literally hundreds of customers across all these markets. So it's a pretty exciting place to be when you can see kind of 5 years in the future what all these companies are doing with their internal innovation efforts.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's walk it back a little bit. Where's your background coming from, and what was kind of the thought process behind starting Ouster in the first place?
Sure. So I came out to the West Coast to attend Stanford. I'm an engineer by training, so I did degrees in mechanical engineering and robotics at Stanford, and met my co-founder there, Mark Frickel, actually, in the mechanical engineering program. And there was a lot of excitement even back then in autonomous vehicles at Stanford. A professor, Sebastian Thrun, had won this early competition called the DARPA Grand Challenge, and he was a Stanford roboticist. And their car used a combination of camera and radar and LiDAR, very early industrial LiDAR sensors, in order to win that competition. And so that kind of sparked my interest very early on. And out of school, I realized that LiDAR was like this final frontier of sensing technology that was clearly needed to be brought into the modern era. It needed to go digital. It needed to be more affordable. And I actually started a company called Quantergy Systems in 2012 that was an early LiDAR startup, and was the director of engineering there for 2.5 years. Ultimately took a different route, and Mark and I felt that so we struck off on our own, bootstrapped Ouster in 2015, and with the goal of building this as the first digital LiDAR company. And so, I think it was really, it was a combination of that early experience, seeing what was going on in Stanford with the robotics groups, and then this idea that LiDAR really is one of the final frontiers in sensing technology that clearly was very useful, but was completely niche at that point in time, kind of pre-2015. And we wanted to be the company to make it not niche, to make it truly ubiquitous.
So how was that starting out for you in terms of going to investors, if that's what you did, and describing the technology? Were people receptive? Did they believe in the message at the outset?
Yeah. The first thing we did was we spent about 9 months proving to ourselves through first principles physical modeling that the technology we wanted to build could be built. We didn't want to be the fools that asked for a bunch of money and then realized 6 months later that it was impossible, because it really is, injecting this industry with a digital technology and converting it is extremely hard. And it was capital intensive because we're doing semiconductor tape outs, which means making custom semiconductor chips. And that costs a lot of money and a lot of time. So we spent about 9 months in a cold warehouse, an unheated warehouse in South San Francisco, doing modeling and buying optical equipment to kind of prove out the software modeling that we had done. And then, yeah, we went out to Silicon Valley venture capital firms and kind of a wide swath. You really can't turn down a meeting at that point in time. The goal is to raise a first seed round, and we did after about 3 to 6 months. And I think it's always hard raising money. Whatever people tell you, 2020 hindsight, no, it wasn't easy. It was very hard. And I think it's just because we were trying to do something very ambitious with a very small team. When you're developing, I think, digital semiconductor technology, having a small team with not a lot of capital is a risky business. And I'm very fortunate to have made it through that risky period of about 2 years where we had to literally build and bring up silicon chips in a dingy warehouse and prove that our future products were going to work. Fun times. And honestly, I'm glad that we're through that period and don't have to do it again.
Well, not to bring you back and cause more trauma, but what do you feel like are some of the things that pushed you forward in terms of A, accessing capital, and B, bootstrapping and having the sense to kind of push forward? What do you think drove that success, aside from probably obvious, intellect and skills and the background that you have, but aside from that?
It's partially a culture thing. I think that certainly there's a level of grit and determination, and from the founding group that Mark and I hired. And we have this saying that we ship products, not promises, at Ouster, and also that we've really accomplished nothing until we've gotten this technology into a large number of companies and customers' hands. And so there was this focus on not celebrating with prototypes. It's great to have the prototype to prove that things are going to work, but the ultimate goal is ubiquity of a technology, and that's when we want to celebrate. And so I think that goes a long way, because there's always going to be some hard point in time where something that you're building and have been working on for quite a long time just doesn't work, and the only option is to kind of go back and reset and reassess what didn't work, and accept the fact that maybe there's 6 more months of very hard work to get whatever you're building working. So that's one of the cultural things that we built from the very beginning that I think that we've retained, and it's paid off as we've been able to ship kind of product after product iteration over the last 3 years of actually shipping sensors into the market. I think there's no obvious kind of path through this, but culturally, grit and determination gets you a long way, combined with a lot of smart people that we hired along the way.
And do you feel like your background at Stanford, like all the entrepreneurial spirit there and all the discoveries, was that, did that provide mentorship or kind of guidance in some way, or did you kind of figure out the path on your own?
I think that, it's hard to point to any one thing that was helping us from our experience at Stanford, but I think just culturally, the Valley gives so much kind of latitude, and there's so much inertia around people starting companies that it's absolutely less effort or less of a mental barrier to take that leap in the Valley. I think in all honesty, there's a soft landing. for people like Mark and I if we were to fail in starting a company. Um, and so that's actually a great thing about Silicon Valley. You do want that, to foster people to do ambitious things and sometimes fail at it. Right. But yeah, I think that we didn't have a clear set of mentors that were kind of fostering us through this. Everybody has mentorship through their own avenues, but it very much felt like we were setting off in the dark alone, and we're going to have to figure this out without outside input.
And you mentioned that from the beginning, you and Mark had a pretty clear idea of how you wanted to take the Lidar technology. Were there other things that you felt certain of how you were going to do it, and then, in the kind of process of building it out, realize, no, we kind of have to tweak this and move this a little bit?
There's always tweaking. My goal with Ouster is to make the right big bets. We're still a relatively small company, and to go off on a major tangent and spend a lot of money and fail at this point is not what we want to do. We don't want to be a company that's having to pivot a lot. But that doesn't mean that we should be constantly course correcting, or in engineering terms, kind of closed loop controlling the company to our goal, which means stopping and reassessing constantly on whether the technology and the products that we're building are appropriate for the goal that we had in mind originally, and whether the goal that we had in mind is a moving target, and actually we need to change focus because of just a moving target. And but I am, if you look back at our first pitch deck in early 2016, it is remarkable how much we got right. Of the early spec of the first products that we released to market, of the, it's and the business model, talking about the diversified approach, how we're entering the entering the market. And I think that at least for us and a hardware technology where there are long cycles of development with the semiconductor tape outs, was really critical that we didn't get those core things wrong from the outset.
And talk about the decision to go public and the way you went public with Colonnade earlier this year. Talk about that approach and why it was the time to go public, and why that specific deal made the most sense for you.
Yeah, Ouster is a growth stage company, so we needed capital to continue to expand and really create a ubiquitous technology. And SPACs are a great vehicle for a company in its growth stage that also has sound fundamentals around good product market fit, positive gross margins, significant customer base, go-to-market strategy that's been kind of thought out and proven in market. And so, and then that allows us to access public markets and raise the money, the capital needed to continue to grow the business. So we felt that we had that combination of the fundamentals, and I think that that's something that Colonnade also saw in us. And so, we went public on March 12th on the New York Stock Exchange. We brought $300 million of gross proceeds onto the balance sheet, and so, I think there's a lot of different types of companies that are going public through SPACs, but at its core, sound fundamentals and a growth stage company. That's exactly what SPACs were built for, and I couldn't be happier that we've gone this route so that we can focus on building the company.
Is the financial side of things something that comes naturally to you? Is that something that you're kind of leading as CEO? How is that working? Because it seems like that would be something that doesn't sound like it's in your background. Is that something that you've taught yourself, that you've learned, or that somebody else is kind of managing more than you?
Well, we have a CFO, Anna Brunel, and she is I would say the lead on, she has the most public market experience of anyone at Ouster, I would say. She's been a public CFO at TiVo for a number of years, and a private CFO at a number of Silicon Valley companies. So I would say she is the one that brought a wealth of experience and a fantastic work ethic and kind of strategic mind to the table and helped us through the process. And I'm here to contribute and learn. And for me and Mark, there's always something new that we have to learn and a new frontier. That's just part of being a founder of a company like this. But yeah, kudos to Anna and the rest of the team for being the real, experienced leaders on this.
So since Ouster's gone public, there's been a lot of interest from investors. And as we said, it's a more and more saturated market, even though it's very specific. But what I think a lot of investors like about Ouster is, as we said, the diversified approach. And also recently, you guys have been doing like some great numbers, some great improvements in like commercial signups is one example that's gotten a lot of attention from investors. Talk about the approach there and what that's bringing to the marketplace and what you feel like that's enabling Ouster to do.
Yeah, and this all goes back to, so one of the cultural kind of elements that Mark and I wanted to build into Ouster at its core was this idea of transparency and dependability. And that was both for our internal culture, but how we treated customers, given that we were building safety critical technology that could, and also now for the investment community. So my goal, Anna's goal, Mark's goal is to build a company that is seen as the most reputable and most consistent Lidar company in public markets or in private markets for that matter. And so we've very much focused on clearly communicating what our progress is, communicating real tangible progress, things like positive gross margins. We have the best gross margins in the industry at this point, real revenue, hundreds of customers. And now this concept of a strategic customer agreement, or SCA, is this new metric that we introduced on our earnings call, actually before our earnings call, but that we want to focus on because we want to communicate dependable, repeatable customers that we are winning and that we're converting to contracted customers that are governed over, that have kind of terms that are governing our relationship with them over multiple years. And we think that's a really important aspect of this industry, that we're showing that we have this repeatable revenue stream. It's something that every investor looks for in a hardware company, and most software companies have a kind of de facto. And so that's why we're spending so much time on it, because it's really we think we can be the first company to push some of this, like a little bit more rigor into the Lidar industry and how we're communicating progress on the commercial side. So hopefully other companies adopt the SCA kind of framework that we're introducing, but regardless, we're going to be incredibly clear and transparent on what an SCA is, and continue to communicate those and that progress over time.
Yeah, I think anybody that is following Ouster and followed your recent earnings, which was obviously your first earnings since going public, the level of transparency is very evident and was even commented on by analysts. And I think, looking at so many companies across the marketplace, I think real transparency, not just touting transparency, but really, actively producing transparency is really something I think always makes a company stand out, and something that investors always respond really, really well to. Was that an ethos from everybody? Like when you were starting out, look, the most important thing here is to be really transparent and give out that data and give really, deep explanations about what's going on?
Yeah, and it's not that hard to do that, it turns out. Well, it can, once you start doing it. So yes, this has been a core aspect of Ouster strategy from our founding, because again, when you're selling safety critical technology, you have to explain a fair amount about your products and their theory of operation and things like that to certify these products as functionally safe with, say, a huge heavy equipment manufacturer or an automaker. And that transparency is important to win business first and foremost. And that's been very successful for us. I think we want to be that company to our customers. And by extension, we want to be that company to our investors as well. And so, I think we have significant progress. We're proud of it, and there's no reason not to just clearly communicate that. And I think we have We have hundreds of customers across 50 countries. We have close almost 28% non-GAAP gross margins in the last quarter. That's absolutely industry leading. We've outsourced our manufacturing. We're the only company that's outsourced manufacturing to a major contract manufacturer. Those are proof points that it's hard to refute, and there's no reason not to just clearly communicate them.
And how do you kind of building on that scale, like developing that scale? You described coming to the public markets as one of the reasons was to take on that capital and afford you the opportunity to do more things with it. Is that kind of how when it's time to scale, that you're figuring out the little incremental steps and then you're able to build more capital with that and then scale that way? Is that kind of the general thought process there?
Yeah, I think maybe when it's time to scale is when you can clearly articulate what you're going to do with the money, maybe. I use this this criteria when we're hiring someone internally to Ouster, for instance. If someone can clearly articulate the role that a new person is going to play at Ouster, then that's a pretty good indication that headcount is needed. And so, I apply that same metric to any time we're spending money, right? And so, the three areas where we're going to spend money is on scaling our sales and marketing team. We have good product market fit. We have products. Let's go out and win more customers because we know that there's over 10,000 that we can go win. It's accelerating our hardware roadmap. We can spend more money to build more chips more quickly, and we can double the rate of innovation internal to Ouster. And then we can invest in headcount on our software solutions side of the business so that we can build more of the value add software that our customers need and are already asking us for. And so those are the three areas that's what growth means to me, is investing in those three areas.
And in terms of gaining profitability, what's the guidance that you feel like is what you're aiming for in terms of achieving that?
Yeah, and so here, the first very important criteria is we are positive on gross margins. And so the only thing we technically do need to do is scale our sales, and we could reach profitability. Now it's always a balance of how much cash is going out the door, how much you're spending on OpEx, CapEx, combined with how much you're scaling, what you're shipping. And we are choosing to spend more. We raise this money to spend it to accelerate growth, in the out years. So we're going to spend some more on OpEx, a little more on CapEx to accelerate the business higher, to those three initiatives. And right now we're expecting to go cash flow positive in 2023. But we are in this position where we get to choose. This is something where we actually have control, because we are operating with positive gross margins, which is a very major milestone in this industry. Not many companies, if any of the companies in our peer set, are operating with positive margins.
And what's your thoughts, like looking out in the landscape, let's say in the next, maybe 2 to 5 years, where do you see it developing in terms of the total addressable market of, where this technology sits, where it plays, how much you're able to do in that?
Yeah, and I think this is one of the most exciting aspects of Ouster is the fact that we're just scratching the surface with about 500 customers today versus where the addressable market is going to grow. And it's owing to the fact that we're playing across industries. And I don't think, I think I viscerally understand this massive shift in adopting automation and autonomy technology across literally like the entire industrialized economy. But it's something that's going to become more and more apparent, I think, to investors, analysts, and the broader public just through time, and example after example after example of like, oh wow, I didn't know that digital Lidar could be a better, could produce better results than a camera in this or that or application. And we saw that in the last 10 years with digital cameras, where camera technology has gotten so good that it's become ubiquitous. Again, it's flying on a helicopter on Mars, and that same technology is, maybe have 3 or 4 digital cameras in your pocket at all times today. And so I expect that same level of kind of ubiquitous adoption to happen in the next 10 years. And that's going to explode the TAM we're modeling of $8.6 billion by 2025 for the more narrowly defined set of high performance digital LiDAR applications that we're targeting. Um, so it's an exciting future that we're all pushing towards.
I mean, speaking of autonomy, I think for the most part, most investors or, consumers of the marketplace think automatically of, autonomous vehicles, which doesn't always get the best press. When do you feel like that technology is going to be ready kind of for public use widespread?
Yeah, I think that people are expecting that we're gonna, snap our fingers and then it's gonna be this binary switch. We're all gonna be riding around in robotaxis,
So
and
that's not how
it's
it's
just
going to work.
not even close. Yeah, it's so far from that. It's gonna be decades of gradual shifting from what we have today to fully autonomous, and and then one day you're going to wake up in 2 decades and realize that we really are living in the future.
Right.
But what we see in our customer base is that, and this kind of crawl, walk, run mentality. Our customers are figuring out ways to commercialize and reach production on automation technology before they have to be fully autonomous. So good examples like Plus, in robo trucking, where we have a lot of success in this industry. And robo trucking doesn't, in order to adopt the majority of the safety technology, we don't have to have fully autonomous trucks that have no driver. We can augment a driver with a safety system that uses LiDAR and save lives, save fuel, and just build a more efficient industry. And so that is maybe the walk stage and eventually, sure, they'll start to automate those completely, and that's part of their strategy. But we see that across many different sectors as a stepping stone where we can reach production and get most of us in our records in these different industries by doing a partial kind of automation or augmentation of a human. And that's still exciting. Our goal is to get this technology out, and if we can get the vast majority of the benefit in a much shorter time scale, like in the next 5 years, that's great for everyone.
Yeah, it's interesting. I heard a couple weeks ago somebody say, like, in big movements, the 1 to 99% is really slow, and the 99 to 100 is like, as you said, that's
Yeah.
the snap of the fingers moment, I think, when we get to the Jetsons reality. So talking about kind of the future of those industries, do you feel like Ouster plays as an ancillary play to some of those industries, or do you feel like you play across all sectors?
I think we absolutely are. We're playing across, our four markets, and we're a core supplier in those four markets. We really are providing the base enabling technology for a large number of these advanced forward-looking applications. So, a company like Sandvik is building major mining machinery manufacturer. Without our LiDAR sensors, they would not be able to automate these kind of dangerous, these huge mining machines that are operating in dangerous environments. It's just the fundamental enabling technology. And that's what sensors are. Sensors are the connection between the digital, world and the physical world. And there's no better sensor than a LiDAR sensor for doing that in a safety critical, ultra dependable way. And that's why I think we've had so much success in pulling on a large number of customers that span all of our markets, is just because they've been waiting for an affordable, performant, kind of rugged and reliable technology that can be adopted, and then they can start investing in the automation packages or technology that they want to inject into their requisite industries.
The other thing I wanted to ask you about is Ouster's board, which is, really impressive in terms of what they're bringing to the table and the backgrounds that they have. Do you want to talk about compiling that or getting those people on board? How that happened? Was it organic? Did they just hear about Ouster and liked what you guys were doing? Is it more of a thoughtful reach out approach? Talk to us about how that happens.
Yeah, it's I mean, talk about a new experience. Being tasked with building a public board is not something that I had done before, and it turned out really well. I'm very excited by the group that we've got, and I think um, it's kind of a combination of all the things you mentioned. It's ultimately it's a pretty personal thing to ask someone to be on a board like this. It's going to be a lot of work. We still have a lot of growth that's got to happen and strategic thinking. And I really wanted immense involvement from the board and a diversity of kind of thought, but also a lot of relevant experience. And I think we've done that really well. I mean, we have people like Sundari Mitra, who's a fantastic technical leader and has been an entrepreneur multiple times in her past. Carl Bass, same thing. He's been as an entrepreneur, but also run Autodesk for over 15 years and has this great view of the multi-market nature of selling solutions into a lot of the same industrial companies that we do. And Manny with great experience in core kind of semiconductor companies like onsemi. And yeah, I think that I just focused on making sure we had a good dynamic because I wanted the board to want to interact with each other and feel that they could be helpful. Like, as a board member, you want to feel and actually be, not just feel helpful, but be helpful. And so that's it's kind of like hiring someone. If you can point to a way that a person can be helpful for your company, then that's probably a good indication that they're the right fit if they're willing to help in that way. So yeah.
As you kind of approach each step of becoming the CEO, or I mean, you are the CEO of a publicly traded company, but as each step kind of evolves on the path, how do you kind of approach each kind of new step? Is it something that you educate yourself on, or is it intuitive? How do you approach it?
There's probably a combination of a couple different approaches. There's some intuition. There's that's built up over time and understanding, the dynamics of your own company. But, I think I wake up and every day is completely new with a new challenge. And that's just something that you have to be comfortable with and kind of exude calm, regardless of what's going on. And so, yeah, I always seek advice. We have a great executive team at Ouster. We have a great board, and we have a lot of very experienced people here. And I know a lot of what I know, and I know hopefully I have intuition around what I probably don't have experience in, and where I should really seek outside advice. So, and then there's independent ways of just educating myself, and that's something that Mark and I have done quite well, I think, in the past. But it also, I think it just comes back to the people and the employees. Anytime there's something that we're doing that we know is gonna, we kind of have like this spidey sense around, okay, this, whatever we're doing, this is going to affect our employees. And we need to think really hard about how we're going to communicate this or what we have to do, given that it's going to affect those people. And yeah, that's probably spidey sense or intuition that's built up over time.
Yeah, look, I mean, you guys have started a company together, gone public, and you're still together. There must be a lot of spidey sense between the two of you in terms of that synergy. The last thing I wanted to ask you was the name Ouster, how you came up with it, and what do you feel like it's bringing to the marketplace?
So Ouster is this incredibly nerdy reference to a sci-fi book, Hyperion, and the Ousters are just, I mean, so it's a reference to sci-fi. The Ousters were a race of humans that kind of embraced technology for the betterment of humankind, I guess you could say. So they're like space hippies or something. Nice. But I don't know that we fully thought, kind of extrapolated out being a public company with the name Ouster. It's certainly unique and turned some heads, but I think it works for us. And we had the option to potentially change it at multiple times through our history, and we stuck with it. And I think we like it because it's a little weird.
I like it. Well, space hippie, you got me at space hippie.
There you go.
That's a great description. Well, Angus, it's been a real great pleasure talking to you and understanding more about Lidar technology and what Ouster's bringing to the marketplace. Anything else you want to leave investors with that maybe you think they're not paying attention to, or something that's uncovered about that still needs to be uncovered about Ouster, I'm happy for you to share that.
Well, I think I'm looking for long-term holders of our stock that understand the vision for the company, and I would love to talk to anyone that's interested in hearing our story. And so I'll leave it at that. But thank you for having me on today. Yeah.
Awesome. It was a pleasure. Thanks, Angus. I appreciate it.